It's nostalgia versus the new kid on the block. With Spider-Man possibly heading back into Sony's hands, is it really such a big mistake? Or could it possibly be for the best? Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome to another Cinema Showdown. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy. Before we get started, be sure to check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at BamTubeTV, where you can find all that's upcoming on the channel. And just like that, you beautiful people, we can hop right into the first round. You have Sam Raimi's trilogy, which had 3 full movies and a total of 5 villains, where Tom Holland only had 2 movies and 2 villains. But for the majority of people, the Vulture and Mysterio from both of the Spider-Man movies are some of their favorite villains in the entire MCU. For the Raimi trilogy though, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, amazing. Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus, equally as amazing, quite possibly even better. You get to see their descent into madness. They start off as everyday working men. Of course, Norman Osborn owns Oscorp, and Dr. Octopus is about to make the biggest scientific breakthrough possibly ever. But they lose everything. These men are beaten down to their knees by the world, by society. They are left outcasted, destroyed, and they feel like there is no other choice. It's that descent into madness that makes them such great villains. On top of that though, it's the personal connection that they share with Spider-Man. Even Sandman, for crying out loud, is a pretty solid villain, and here's why. He's not just a generic villain like the new Goblin or Venom. He has real motives, and he's almost a misunderstood bad guy. They even say it in the movie. He's not a bad guy, he's just done bad things, and everything that he does is to save his daughter's life. And it makes him a solid villain because he is so misunderstood. Switch over to the MCU villains, being Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, and Mysterio, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. These guys, they're fine villains. They give great performances because they're great actors, but their villains to me are just pretty generic. You know, I actually like what makes the Vulture turn into a villain, but honestly, just as a villain, he doesn't really do a whole lot for me. He has pretty generic villain plans. Steal stuff because I hate Tony Stark. Really, that's all it is. For Mysterio, I mean, we all knew he was going to be the villain. It's Mysterio, he's the master of illusions, we knew this was coming, that was no surprise. But to be quite frank with you, I actually enjoyed him better when he was trying to portray this good guy. And the fact that everything was just kind of drones and he really didn't do much, like sure, he was the mastermind and I know he's the illusionist, but usually Mysterio does the stuff by himself. Instead, he just was the face of everything and he had everyone working for him behind the scenes. For me, it's that descent into madness, the personal connection, and the actors that portray the villains in the Raimi trilogy that give them the edge over the pretty generic but well-acted villains found in the MCU. Therefore, I'm going to have to give round 1 to the Sony Spider-Man. Both of these Spider-Men started off with their makeshift suits. For me, the Tobey makeshift suit is just too basic, like it looks like he's just wearing pajamas and doesn't even have anything to cover his eyes. But for the Tom Holland one, it feels like a very cool comic book accurate starting suit. Then they both transition into their main suits, which is the Spider-Man suit that we almost all associate Spider-Man having. For Tobey, you have the now iconic Raimi suit. For Tom Holland, he didn't make his from scratch like Tobey did, instead he was gifted his by Tony Stark. Although the MCU main suits are filled to the absolute brim with tech, I feel like it's too much and it really does cheapen the character overall, rather than actually pushing himself and getting done what needs to get done. Not to mention in Homecoming, he has no idea what's going on with all this extra tech. I mean, he almost kills a couple of guys for crying out loud by going in instant kill mode.
Activating instant kill.
No, I don't want to kill anybody.
There's no doubt in my mind that when it comes to the main suits, we almost all associate the Spider-Man suit with the Raimi trilogy suit. And then lastly, we have our specialty suits. So the only real special suit that we get in the Raimi trilogy is the symbiote black suit Spider-Man, which to me was honestly a massive letdown because the 90s cartoon version is so damn cool. And then for the MCU one, you have the Iron Spider and the stealth, or as I like to call it, Night Monkey suit. Okay, these suits are just cooler, okay? There's no doubt in my mind, anyone's mind, when we finally see the instant kill mode activated in Endgame, it is as badass as we wanted it to be. It bails Peter out far more than once. So round 2 is going to go to the MCU Spider-Man. In Spider-Man 3, we have Bryce Dallas Howard's version of Gwen Stacy, and she's really only in it because Peter wants to make Mary Jane jealous, and for no other reason. She's an airhead, she doesn't do much, she's a very poorly written character, and she leaves as quick as she comes in. For Spider-Man Homecoming, the majority of the movie we focus on Liz, but as we know, at the end of Homecoming, she's gone, and then we don't see or hear from her again. I get that they're supposed to be kind of awkward high school kids, but I really never felt like Liz cared about Peter at all. Like, sure, she went to the homecoming dance with him, but I just never felt any sort of connection whatsoever. Now we have MJ versus MJ. Let's be honest, Kirsten Dunst's acting can be pretty bland at times, but Toby and Kirsten share an undeniable chemistry. You watch them grow from nerdy, awkward high school kids to being together to being almost engaged. And she has the look and feel of the true-to-source material Mary Jane. As for Zendaya's Mary Jane, she's not even really in it a whole lot, and you don't find out until the last second that she is MJ. But in Far From Home, their chemistry is astonishing. They feel very awkward, but it is in the most genuine and believable way. And by the time they share that first on-screen kiss, you feel it was earned. And you look forward to their future together, which of course might not happen now. Although I would say that in Far From Home, Zendaya and Tom Holland's chemistry might actually be better than almost anything found in the original trilogy. You only get that one movie out of them. Therefore, I'm going to have to give round 3 to the Sony Spider-Man. Uncle Ben's death is a pinnacle point for Spider-Man. He wants to protect others from having this happen to them. And with the passing of Uncle Ben, his words stick with him throughout the remainder of the trilogy, and that is, with great power comes great responsibility. It is this point in Peter's life that makes him decide that he needs to be Spider-Man. Despite Tobey Maguire being such an ugly crier, he really does sell this scene. It feels very real, and if you do not shed a tear at this moment, then I fear for your soul. The subway fight in Spider-Man 2 is hands down the best action sequence out of any Spider-Man movie. It feels very real, and it shows what length Spider-Man is willing to go to save civilians. The fight itself is something to behold. Spider-Man and Doc Ock exchanging blows, going back and forth. Doc Ock is flinging civilians everywhere. Spider-Man is tasked with saving them, and then it transitions into the now infamous Tobey Maguire poop face when he's trying to stop the train from going off the tracks. The last one I've chosen to go with is actually the final fight from the first Spider-Man, because it is the most dark, realistic, and gritty Spider-Man fight that we have. It also feels the most closest to home, because Spider-Man is getting his ass beat. But then of course, when the Goblin threatens Mary Jane, Spider-Man turns it around and puts the Goblin in his place. And it gets to the point that the Goblin must remove his mask, revealing that he is Norman Osborn. It becomes this touching moment. He wants to save him because he realizes that he's really suffering here with some sort of mental illness, but then at the last second, dodges the glider, Norman Osborn dies, and that sets off a whole new series of events for the rest of the trilogy. For the MCU Spider-Man, I went with the "Hey everyone" scene, in which it is Spider-Man's first appearance in the MCU. He's being called in by Iron Man, steals Captain America's shield, lands like a badass, and just simply says,
Hey everyone.
so cool in the best possible way that Spider-Man could have been introduced into the MCU. At the end of Spider-Man Homecoming, when Peter is lured into the Vulture's nest, and then the whole building is brought down on top of him, he's screaming, he's crying for help, and the words keep echoing in his head from Tony Stark that if you're nothing without the suit, you shouldn't have it. So he has to prove to Tony and to himself that he is still Spider-Man without the suit. Spider-Man is not the suit, Peter is Spider-Man, Spider-Man is Peter. This for me was a turning point for this character. He realized that he did not need the suit or the tech to be Spider-Man, that he was Spider-Man. And lastly was the "you can't trick me anymore" scene from the end of Spider-Man Far From Home. This one to me, it really felt like he was going from Spider-Boy to Spider-Man. With tears in his eyes, he stops the gun at the last second, no longer falling for Mysterio's illusions. He takes full control of his spider sense. That line just has so many meanings. He can't trick him anymore, like seriously with the illusions, but he also can't trick him anymore because he's not just some dumb kid. He feels so betrayed by Mysterio. He trusted him with everything. He feels like he's doing this for himself, he's doing this for Tony, he's doing this for the world, and it is such a powerful scene. There's just no denying that with 5 appearances in the MCU, Tom Holland's Spider-Man has many more iconic and memorable moments, and has so many game-changing moments. Round 4 is going to go to the MCU Spider-Man. Before we decide a winner, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying the video, and click that little bell icon so you can be notified about all of our latest cinema showdowns. Both of them have that cocky, smart, quick-witted attitude. They love the people, and the people love them. Of course, the MCU one, he's still a kid, and is a very real, genuine kid. But Raimi's Spider-Man knows what he is to the city, knows what he must do. He protects the people, they have a little parade for him, they have shirts, everybody loves him. You don't really get that with the MCU's version, but you also get a lot more action with him and a lot more interaction with other heroes. But I feel like they're both very true to the Spider-Man character. It is the Peter Parker aspect that is very much different. For Tobey Maguire, even in the first Spider-Man, I never, even for a second, believed that he was a high school student. He looked like he was like mid-20s, early 30s in the first one, and then definitely like he was in his 30s in the second and third one. And although he is almost kind of awkward, it's more so like a shy sort of awkward. He's very quiet, and he only really amps up when things get him going. He's just not that great of a Peter Parker. I really do like him as a character, and I don't have that many gripes with the original trilogy, and especially his portrayal. He plays his own version, and that's fine, but it is not really true to the source material. Switch over to Tom Holland, and he is a high school kid playing a high school kid. He feels like a teenager. He acts like a teenager. Everyone else he talks to, he's stuttering, he's awkward, he's very shy, he's finding ways to make conversation. He constantly seems like he's caught off guard when anyone else talks to him. When he's meeting Tony Stark, when he's meeting the rest of the Avengers.
Captain? Big fan of Spider-Man?
Yeah, we'll talk about it later. Just...
Hey, everyone.
He just doesn't know how to react. He's so used to living in such a closed bubble that being Spider-Man really brings him out of it, and I feel like that is so true to the character of Spider-Man and Peter Parker alike. Tom Holland plays a much better and honestly the pinnacle and best version of Spider-Man that we have had yet. Therefore, the fifth and final round and the crown is going to the MCU Spider-Man. I really want and pray that Spider-Man stays in the MCU, as I think that this is the best version of the character that we have gotten yet. And especially where Far From Home left off, I would be devastated if we do not get to see this character arc pay off. So folks, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and let me know, whose side are you on, Sony or Disney? And as always, thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap.